The book of Ecclesiastes has a natural division in three parts, the main body of the book, and then there's an interesting prologue and a matching sort of epilogue at the other end. They serve as bookends to help to hold together what we read in between. So what is written in the prologue and what is written in the epilogue help us to understand the main themes of the book. So the book is divided into three parts: the prologue, the main body of the work, and then the epilogue, and we're going to take each of these pieces in turn. You can see they're short, but the themes that are developed in those two areas help us with the rest of the book. Here are some of the common themes that are showing up right here in the beginning and at the end. So repetition in the prologue and the epilogue are keys to the main themes of the rest of the book. So somebody that comes along and says, I don't understand how Ecclesiastes is laid out, how it argues, the themes that are represented, we will follow those as we go through the book, and they'll help us to understand the message of the book. So some of the themes are vanity of vanities, all is vanity, so we could translate that as we've already seen as frustration or some other words similar. And then there's the theme of true profit. What does a man gain by becoming wise? What does a man gain by the toil of his hands? What does a man gain? It's wondering in life, what is the true profit? And then, as we've already discussed, there is the issue of everything arguing under the sun. Those, what we call those dull sublunary joys, when we are looking for the one supreme joy, which is God, and then everything else comes to us from his hands as a gift. So the two passages, the prologue and the epilogue, serve to highlight the unity of the book. They also tell us a little more about Qoheleth than we talked about in the last time. There's a description right at the beginning that he is the preacher, or the assembler, who is the son of David and the king in Jerusalem. And so he's talking about one who has convened a meeting for the purposes of wisdom and instruction. And so this is the preacher who is the son of David and the king in Jerusalem. The epilogue says that Qoheleth was wise. It says that Qoheleth taught the people knowledge. And then it says these two things, which will be really useful for us as we go through the book of Ecclesiastes. One is that he weighed out and he studied and he arranged the Proverbs with great care. He also, it says, sought out to find words of delight. So after he had the message, he thought about the rhetoric. What is the best way to communicate that message to the audience in a memorable way, in a way that they will not only understand, but be filled with wonder, with joy, with the motivation to go ahead and pursue wisdom? How would you do that? And so he has taken, he says, great care to study out the best proverbs, the best wisdom, and then to arrange those things, perhaps not even in the book of Ecclesiastes, but also in the book of Proverbs. And he is trying to do it in such a way that he brings words of delight, so that they challenge us and they motivate us and they lift us. And then he says Qoheleth was upright and he wrote words of truth. So that's a pretty big commendation for what we can expect as we go through the book of Ecclesiastes. So he diligently applied himself to the task of giving expression to truth and doing it in a memorable, practical fashion, which leaves me with all kinds of questions as an interpreter. Because like when I've read some sections in Ecclesiastes and sections in Proverbs, I've wondered how come it seems like they're arranged almost in a random sort of way. And I'm wondering now, because this says he took very great care not only in studying out the best teaching, but also in arranging it in what he considered the best way to accomplish his task, there must be some reason for arranging it as he has. And so we're going to try to look at that as we go through. Perhaps there's a pedagogical element. Perhaps he arranged it this way because this is the best way to teach wisdom to a student so that it'll stick in their head, so so that it makes a difference in their lives. And so we're going to watch that as we go through the book of Ecclesiastes, particularly in that section we've called the body. So here's the beginning of Ecclesiastes. There in the prologue, we get this arrangement of cycles that occur in nature that are examples of things that are not finished, things that are not filled up, things that are not finally come to a sense of being completed, a sense of contentment. So here we have, and the passage says, the sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. So we have the sun, we have the wind, we have the water cycle. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. You see? So weariness comes from these things, these tasks, these cycles never being completed. The eye is never finished seeing, right? There's always one more thing to see, one more thing to enjoy. The ear is never filled with hearing. There's one more song to enjoy. So there's always a lack of contentment that comes from here because the human soul wants something more. So the solar day is an example, the example of the jet stream and the wind, of water cycles, of history, of eyes and ears. They're all examples of frustration because they are never finished. They are never satisfied. Let me just talk a little bit about the verse that pertains to history. Listen to this. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Love the quote from Patrick Henry. It says, I don't know of any other way to judge the future but by the past. So these cycles are actually useful for us to understand the experience of man and to understand what decisions we have a tendency to make. But again, all of these cycles are endless natural cycles that are never finished. They're never satisfied. So then when we jump to the conclusion of the matter, at the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, we're told there are two final admonitions, to fear God and to keep his commands. Then it says, this is the whole duty of man. Now you might have a version that when it says the whole duty of man, the word duty is in italics. That's because it's supplied by the translator. It's not really there. It really says in Hebrew, the whole of man. So you could translate it for this is every man. This is all there is. It's sort of, Derek Kidner says it's a concentrated way of saying what every man is destined for, what every man should be wholly absorbed in is fulfilling those two commands. That's where we will get satisfaction. That's where we will get contentment, to fear God and to keep his commandments. Looking forward to going through Ecclesiastes for my own sake, because this is not only going to help me in my walk with God, but hopefully I'll be wiser about the things that vie for my attention. Because in the final analysis, what we all want is we want God put in his place and all of the other things to be handed to us from his free gift. Thanks for hanging out.